Welcome to the Sports Cypher, brought to you by GAS Sports Network. I'm your host with the most, Nick Valsalin, a.k.a. Scruff Lion. I'm here in the Lions Den, ready to dive in some of the hottest topics right now in sports. I have a special guest with me today, my man Jerome Coleman. He's one of our NFL contributors for GAS Sports. Jerome, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure, bro. Always a pleasure, man. If you don't know, check out GoodAsSports.com, man. We got all the latest content out there. Jerome's killing the game right now, coming in the game hot. NFL season, week 3. We're fresh off a Monday Night Football game. Seemed like it was going to be a little bit of a blowout, but as you know, Ryan Fitzpatrick came in there and made it interesting. So just kind of jumping off that week 3 where we had crazy performances across the board, just when you thought you knew about what was going on in the NFL, something like Buffalo beating the Vikings happened. So a lot of parity, jumping all over the place with this. Just when you thought you knew something about the NFL, pretty much everything changes on you in any week. And you got to love the parity right now in the NFL. So we're going to jump in. Really big-time performers this week, some major performances. So me and Jerome both have our own top 5s here, top 5 players of the week. Jerome, who's your top 5 performances of the week, so based on what we've seen last week?
All right, based off of week 3, the top 5 guys in my eyes, I got to have Earl Thomas on that list. His 2 picks against Dallas was very impressive. Robert Woods had 10 catches, 104 yards in the victory. Khalil Mack was balling this week with 2 sacks and a forced fumble that really turned that whole game around. I'm going to give some love to Pat Mahomes. He's been on fire all season, 314 yards, another 3 passing touchdowns. I don't know how you can stop that man right now with that offense. And then you got Drew Brees. Drew Brees is probably the most underrated elite quarterback of his generation. I know he's playing in the era with Rodgers and Brady and all that, but if you take a look at what this man did last Sunday, he had just as many rushing touchdowns as Cam Newton. He threw for more yards, and he threw for another 3 touchdowns. Drew Brees is just incredible, and I don't feel like enough people are giving him credit for what he just did in Atlanta this past Sunday.
You know, actually, you're right. I kind of overlooked the rushing touchdowns myself, but, you know, that's actually a really good point. He did have a couple rushing TDs in there, had a really good game, and they won the game. So you got to give him credit on that. It was, you know, one of those high scoring, anyone could win, last person that has the ball ends up winning the game kind of games, and Drew Brees does what he does best. I mean, he's been doing this for years now, and he doesn't seem like he's missing a beat at all. Saints, you know, obviously going to be a playoff contender this year, of course. And like you said, Patrick Mahomes looking great so far, so good this season for the Chiefs. I'm loving what I'm seeing with him. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So kind of to combat your top 5, I got to throw Matt Ryan on the list. You know, naturally Brees won the game, so you got to give Brees the edge. But I got to give some love to Matt Ryan here. 5 TDs, hell of a game, 374 yards. What I loved most about what he did was he got his new target involved. New target, Calvin Ridley. Had a pretty good game last week, talking about maybe 65 yards. Solid breakout performances. Maybe, you know, keep an eye on him. And then, boom, it all just happened at once. I'm talking about 3 touchdowns for the young guy, 146 yards, 7 receptions, had a bomb of 75 yards. He took it to the house. He had one hell of a game, came out right away, and he's looking like he's going to be one of the top receivers in this class. So far, the first one to really make a big splash this season, it's been Calvin Ridley. So I'm really excited to see what they got going on opposite Julio Jones. The last time Atlanta took a receiver in the first round, it was Julio Jones. So maybe this guy's the second coming. I don't know. I want to give him that just yet, but, I mean, he's looking pretty damn good.
I mean, that'd be scary.
Yeah, it would. Imagine having 2 Julio Joneses on your team. But Calvin Ridley, you know, proving why he was a blue-chip prospect, you know. Like to see a little bit more from those other first-round receivers, DJ Moore, these other guys. But Calvin Ridley, first out the gate, looking like he's going to be a real problem in this league. So going off Calvin Ridley, we're going to keep it in the division. I got to give my shout-out to Christian McCaffrey, number 3 on my list. Always been a dual threat back. Last season kind of struggled on the ground, but not struggling at all. 184 yards, 28 carries, averaging about 6.6 yards per carry. Looking really good for the Panthers. They got the win. in Cincinnati. They're going to have to keep up that division right now. Just when you thought that division couldn't get any tougher, you've got teams like Tampa Bay in there at 2-1 now that are going to compete for that playoff spot. So, I mean, the Panthers, if the Buccaneers are going to be a playoff team or possibly fight for one, the Panthers might be the odd team out. And Christian McCaffrey, you're going to need more games like that from him.
Yeah, definitely. I would have had him on my list had Cam not stole his touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Cam Newton in the goal line, he always finds his way to inch his way in there, Christian McCaffrey, not a big power back. They had Mike Anderson. Mike Anderson actually, not Mike Anderson, what's his face? But he ran off a screen, and I was shocked to see that happen. He was looking like McCaffrey.
C.J. Anderson.
C.J. Anderson, my bad. It's like the same Andersons. Yeah. The Broncos running backs, they always have an Anderson in the backfield.
Yeah, they really do.
They just got a rotating family of Andersons that come in and play running back for them. But, yeah, Christian McCaffrey, great game. I actually followed him when he was at college and always been a big fan of him, especially at Stanford, now in the NFL, doing a great job. One person I'd like to throw out there on the list, one more, defensive side of the ball. Got to throw out the name J.J. Watt. Big-time performance. Had a few sacks. Has forced fumble on the game. Finally looking like he's bounced back, looking like he's going to be the J.J. Watt that we're used to seeing after a season last year. He had, some injuries. Tough season for the Texans. But they're looking to try to make it back, try to make another run here. And I like what I saw from J.J. Watt yesterday, looking like they're starting to turn the page and hopefully, make a run. They are 0-3 still, but, I mean, at least some promising, action from J.J. Watt. And then last one on my list. Oh, go ahead with that.
I think the issue with the Texans is on offense. I think Watt and them boys, I think they came to play. I don't know what's up with Deshaun, though. He don't look the same.
Yeah, it's funny because, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, we were talking about quarterbacks that are coming back off injury. And, people tend to think, all right, well, yeah, Carson Wentz coming back off injury. Let's take it slow with the guy. We're not sure exactly what he was going to, be doing when he first came back. But Deshaun Watson, it seemed like everyone just forgot that he was injured and he was just going to come back and automatically just start balling like he was last season. But, I mean, it's shown, maybe it's the teams have a little bit more tape on the kid. Maybe he just needs a little bit more time to get acclimated. I mean, he had a better game, in terms of his statistics. He threw a few touchdowns out there, but, I mean, not exactly what they were looking for and not exactly what they need. Last season, he put the team on his back. When he was playing, they were one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL, and right now, not so much. Their offense is definitely lacking big time, and you see the defensive production's there, so they're going to need something from their offense pretty soon.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Pretty soon. I mean, they have the weapons there. You got to look at guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, Lamar Miller's having a decent season. It's not like they're lacking any firepower. I mean, Lamar Miller's not exactly Le'Veon Bell or anything, but I mean, it's pretty good running back.
Yeah, I'm not trying to kill Deshaun Watson, but it's definitely on him. I mean, he's definitely got to. He had like lightning in a bottle last season, and I know it's hard to catch that, but he's got to be that spark for that team. They've been a quarterback away for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember the times when they had, the Carr back there. We had my man Carr back there getting sacked all crazy. Tom Savage, former Rutgers quarterback. Yeah,
terrible quarterback.
They've had their fair share, man. I remember Case Keenum being their starting quarterback once upon a time as well. So, I mean, finally found a good quarterback. I'm hoping they could turn it around. If you checked out the website, I had them predicted to win that division. So far, not looking too good on that prediction. The Jaguars and the Titans actually lead the division right now at 2-1 apiece. They actually have less wins than the Colts right now, which is definitely not what you want to see if you're the Texans right now. All right, and then rounding out my top five, I got to throw this guy out there, even though he lost. My man Ryan Fitzpatrick, or as he's become over this season, the legend of Fitzmagic, coming out here again with another monster game, pretty much making history. Ryan Fitzpatrick, first quarterback in NFL history to do 3 games in a row, 400-plus passing. And he also had 3 touchdowns. Now, he did throw 3 interceptions, too. I'm not gonna not highlight the bad. But made it interesting down the stretch, made some big plays. I love that play where he was scrambling. He took like a 15-yard scramble. He running for his life out there, man. And he was feeling that. This is a guy, he's got 6 kids at home. He's 35 years old. He's been in the league since 2005. It's crazy, man. You don't usually see a backup like this, career backup, suddenly just come into his own in his last season. You know what I mean?
Fitzpatrick is one of the streakiest players ever. When he gets hot, he's like elite status, but then when he gets cold, it's like Ryan Leaf status. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, he's always had those up and down games, but so far 3 games in, small sample size, but it's just been up. Some quality wins to his record too. I mean, first game, he beat the Saints, 4 touchdowns, 417 yards. He looked pretty much perfect in that game. Beat the Eagles, world champions. Did a great job there. That was at home, 400-plus yards, 4 touchdowns again. Quarterback rating of 144, 156 in the first game. Ridiculous numbers. And then, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions against the Steelers. Ended up losing it, but they were within 3 points down the stretch, and he just couldn't come up with the play they needed at the end. But, you got to love what you see with him, and you got to love those weapons out there. They've done a good job of surrounding that team with talent, and it's starting to actually start to flourish. One guy that I was excited to see some production from, O.J. Howard, big-time athletic, big, strong tight end coming in there from Alabama. Didn't really see too much from him last season, but it's looking like he's starting to come into his own. Mike Evans, we already know that he's a beast. He came in yet again yesterday with a huge game. Deshaun Jackson, we know what he does. Gets those deep threats, eats those bombs, talks that trash, but, he's still doing it at this age, and he looks great too. The thing is,
D Jackson is one of my favorite all times, man. I love that guy.
He is such a talent, man, and he's been doing it for so long. And then you even got to mention D-Jack in the list because I believe he just tied Jerry Rice in the all-time receiving list. And big time accomplishment. Jerry Rice, obviously, arguably the best receiver to ever do it. And Deshaun Jackson, I don't think he gets enough credit in this era for being such an elite receiver.
No, he doesn't. He definitely doesn't. It's after he left Philly, whenever you're on a team that's not winning as much, you don't get enough spotlight. And he had some down years in Washington because we weren't winning. Then he went to Tampa. They had a down year last year. But, if Tampa does make this playoff push, man, Deshaun is going to be a big reason.
Yeah, definitely, man. So we got to start talking about Tampa now. It's about that time. Jameis Winston, 3-game suspension, 3 games have passed. Now, this team was built for Jameis, and now it seems like, Fitzpatrick's out here, and he's making them look good. Now, are they making him look good, or is Fitzpatrick making them look good? Either way, it's kind of hard to take a guy out that's playing that well. So, week 4, they've got a tough decision on their hands. Do you ride the hot hand with that Ryan Fitzpatrick, or do you bring in Jameis and Cole? And that's kind of tough, but I kind of want to see what you think, Jerome. If you're the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, what are you doing at quarterback?
Oh, I'm riding with Ryan Fitzpatrick, no questions asked. It's not very debatable to me, in my opinion. It's not very debatable. The Buccaneers haven't had a huge roster turnover from last year to this year. If you're looking at who they have on offense, it's pretty much the same players. If you look at their lack of production with Jameis starting, and you look at their current production with Fitzpatrick starting, you can even go back to the 3 games that Patrick's played last season when I believe Jameis was hurt. And he came in and he did pretty well. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he did pretty well in those 3 games. And then you just mentioned the stat that everyone's talking about, the record-breaking 400 yards back-to-back-to-back. So I looked it up. Jameis Winston has 1 400-yard game in his career. Ryan Fitzpatrick just did that 3 times in a row while your quarterback was suspended for nonsense. If I'm the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm not even thinking about putting Jameis Winston back in the game unless Fitzpatrick gets hurt or turns back into the Fitzpatrick of old, which he'll probably do at some point. But, long term, I think you got to try to ride Winston. Fitzpatrick will probably come to earth at some point, and you could try to get Winston back in there. But going into week 4, it's not even a thought.
Yeah, it's tough to argue with that logic. The numbers there for Fitzpatrick are definitely hard to ignore. But the question that I'm wondering is this. If you go to Fitzpatrick now, and let's say Fitzpatrick rides the wave and he ends up doing pretty good the rest of the season. This guy's 35 years old. He's in like his 13th season, I believe, drafted in 05. Where does that put you in the state of your franchise moving forward? Obviously, I know you want to win now, but, you know, if you go with Fitzpatrick, doesn't that mean that you're pretty much shopping for a new quarterback in a season or two? I mean, what does Fitzpatrick have left in the tank, you know? Is that your quarterback of the future, Jameis Winston? That would be a big decision for Tampa Bay to move. I mean, what do you think about that? Can you go back to Jameis Winston next season?
That is a huge decision. And if let's say Fitzpatrick rides this wave, they make the playoffs, Jameis just lost his job in Tampa Bay. I mean, they're going to have to shop Jameis or let him walk. And, yeah, they have to find another quarterback because Fitzpatrick obviously isn't going to play for another 10 years. But you got to look at what Jameis has already done. If Jameis was having the career that, let's say, Andrew Luck was having his first few years in the season, we wouldn't be talking. It wouldn't matter that Fitzpatrick had 400-yard games back-to-back. If Jameis had balled out the way that, let's say, Deshaun Watson was last season, we wouldn't be thinking about Ryan Fitzpatrick right now. We'd be like, oh, thanks for coming in for that great backup spot, but we're going to Nick Foles you. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. They put Carson Wentz right back in. It's not, you know what I mean? Like it's not a tough choice for Coach Doug Peterson to put Wentz back in, because even though Foles had a really good playoff run and won them the Super Bowl MVP, what had Wentz done before that? He was at MVP level, so it's simple. Winston has done nothing but struggle. And what you're going to do by putting him back in or saying that you're going to stick with him is hope that he's done struggling, and also hope that he's done with whatever off the field. I know this last off the field thing, I don't know how much attention you paid to it, but I'm not putting that all on Jameis. I think the lady was kind of doing too much, but that could be a whole nother podcast. But
it's one of those situations, man. It's hard to call with that.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where it's hard to call, but when you're the franchise quarterback of a team, an NFL team, you don't want to be nowhere near it. You know what I mean? Like it can't come up kind of thing. So that's why I would be comfortable moving on from Jameis. To stick with Jameis would be to stick with drama and to stick with mediocre play, because that's what you've seen in the 3-4 years he's played. So for me to stick with Jameis, he would have to turn it around. He would have to come in and make sure that his team makes the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that, because it's like with Jameis, it's like it's gonna be a funny analogy, but it's like that. It's like if you have a significant other and you see the potential in that person, and you're like, yeah, I've spent so many years with you, you know, I've been with you for 3 years, I'm just waiting for you to turn it around for me. But Ryan Fitzpatrick has already came in and he's done it. You know what I mean? If you put in Jameis, I agree with you, because it's like he hasn't shown what we wanted to see from him in the couple of seasons that he has played. Not enough, you know, and Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, at least not consistently. He's had his moments. Enough. I will give Jameis that. He's had his moments, but it's not consistent. He's been okay, maybe good, but he hasn't been great. And I'm not going to lie, man, I was really high on Jameis coming out. Number 1 pick. I thought this guy was going to be a legend, you know, and yeah, so far it hasn't really been that. So I totally understand that, man. But it looks like they're going to have a decision to make. But, I mean, I agree with you. Ultimately, you got to ride the hot hand, you know, until Fitzpatrick shows you anything different. If he's going to keep going out there throwing 400 yards, 3+ TDs every game, I think they got to ride the hot hand. But, you know, I got a feel for Jameis Winston, and we'll see what ends up happening with that, because we're going to have to keep an eye on that. And then also, you know, everything's been cool with Fitzpatrick because there's been no drama. Now that, like you said, now that Winston's back, you know, inadvertently he's going to be not trying to start no drama, but at the same time, you know, they're going to be talking about him. There's going to be reporters asking these questions. We're already 1 day into him being lifted from the suspension, and, you know, we're already talking about it. So we'll see if they can weather the storm and, you know, keep doing what they're doing with Ryan Fitzpatrick, man. But I definitely like what I've seen so far this season, and it's definitely going to be an interesting story to watch as things play out. Definitely.
All right, so one more thing that I've been having on my mind lately, I've got to talk about Leveon Bell, man, and I got to wonder how much longer this thing is going to go on for. Steelers finally got their first win last night on Monday Night Football, put up a lot of points. Backup James Conner looked pretty good in moments. We all know he's not a Le'Veon Bell, but he looks pretty damn good at the same time. Le'Veon Bell doesn't seem like they have any end to this in sight, but looks like the Steelers have opened up the opportunity for other teams to offer some trades. Now, it's a little early. We'll see what happens. NFL trade deadline, it's a few weeks away, so nothing's necessarily going to happen right away. But I'm sure you, me, any other fantasy owners out there that may be thinking about Le'Veon Bell, let's play a little what if, trade possible destinations for the guy. Few teams that can actually afford the guy. Off the top of this list, New York Jets. They have the salary cap space, so Le'Veon Bell's due about $12 million this season. So in order for a team to acquire them, they'd either have to have that $12 million in space readily available, or they'd have to clear up some space. So here's a few teams that I see that have the cap space or are just $1 million or $2 million away, and maybe some good fits. And you tell me what you think about these teams. But first on the list, New York Jets, Indianapolis Colts, also another team that has the cap space and has a hole at running back. The Oakland Raiders is another team here that could potentially be a landing spot for him. Cleveland Browns actually have the cap space. They're pretty crowded in the backfield, though. Not sure what they would do or if they would actually send him to a division rival. And then any other team, if you think of any other teams. But off the top of that list, I'm looking at that list. I would love to see Le'Veon Bell in the New York Jets uniform. Looks like they have a young team, and this is why I say the Jets is my top pick. Right now, they're definitely a run-dominated team to an extent. They have two decent backs. They have Powell and they have Crowell. Both of these guys are having pretty good seasons. They're among league leaders as far as statistics and rushing. And, these guys aren't anything special. Let's be honest. These guys are solid backs, so they're making the most out of what they have. Now, I think if you put a guy like Le'Veon Bell in that backfield, oh, man, that same production, that system, it's a run-first system. It's a rookie quarterback. What better way to relieve your rookie quarterback than have a guy that'll come out the backfield, catch the ball, make magic happen. And, I understand the stereotype they're saying about running backs not getting paid the big money, but you have to understand that Le'Veon Bell is not an average running back. The guy caught over 75 passes last season out of the backfield.
That's crazy.
He's just as much a wide receiver as he is a running back. If anything, he's like both. So out of those teams I listed, or if there's any other team that you have in mind that you think might be a good fit, where do you see Le'Veon Bell potentially landing, or where would you like to see him land?
I really have no idea how this Le'Veon Bell thing is going to end. He's super dug in. I'm surprised the Steelers haven't tried to trade him sooner. But off the teams that you named, I would like to see him go to the Colts. Andrew Luck outside of T.Y. Hilton and a couple tight ends, he's never had any real weapons. I think he did have Frank Gore for a little bit, but that was an old Frank Gore.
Yeah.
So I would love to see Le'Veon go team up with Luck. I think that would help Luck out a lot.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, now that I'm thinking about that, if you put Le'Veon Bell on the Colts, kind of had me feeling about Peyton. Remember the Peyton Manning years when they had Adrian James, Marvin Harrison. They had a nice little team back there, a nice little balanced team. They haven't had a good running back pretty much in Luck's era. Like you said, Frank Gore towards the tail end of his career, but pretty much some no-name backs right now out there. Yeah, I would like to see him on the Colts. Those are two good teams I could see him going to, both in the division not in the division, but in the conference for the Steelers. So, they're not like legitimate threats right off the bat, but yeah, I could see them going to either of those teams. The question is it past the point of repair now for the Steelers? And then what I see is it seems like the players now, just doesn't seem like that locker room is good over there. It just seems like, well, one thing, it's the culture, and last week I said I don't really blame anyone. I blame the economy for the situation. But now that I'm looking at it a little bit closer and I'm looking at what's happened as a result, I have to blame the front office to an extent, because it's a bad culture to put out there, a bad precedent to put out there. When you have a guy that's out there, he's playing hard, he's putting his all on the game every week. You know what kind of game this is. We've all seen all the things that can happen to NFL players in the long term. They're putting their life out there. and they just want to get their money's worth because, you know, they have a short career, especially running backs. So when a guy's out there putting his all out there and you're not paying him, what kind of message does that send for the rest of the team? Because it seems like now the locker room is a little bit divided. You know, they're seeing guys out there not getting paid for what they're doing, and it seems like there's a little bit of an issue in the locker room there. But the question is, even if you were to work something out, what kind of locker room is he walking back into? Do you think, you know, everything's just going to be okay if he comes back, or what?
No, I think it's beyond repair. I mean, I'm sure he has some close homies in the locker room, but the way the O-line was talking about him, I'm sure that's not going to sit well with them, him, or anybody. I mean, the Steelers should have seen this coming, man. I love Coach Mike Tomlin, but for as much credit as everyone around the country gives him for being a great coach, the Steelers locker room has always been dysfunctional. They've just been winning. So when you're winning, it's easy to get past the knucklehead stuff that they do, but when you're losing, it all starts to stand out a lot. I mean, I was big on the Steelers last year, not so much this year with the whole contract with Leveon Bell. Again, I didn't think he was going to pull this holdout thing, but I mean, I think this is it for the Steelers. This is the last of the Killer Bees. That's going to be done. Ben Roethlisberger's been talking about retirement the last couple seasons. And, I mean, Antonio Brown is just your typical diva receiver, not trying to hate on him or nothing. I'm just saying he is who he is. So, yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin's going to have to reel this team in, but I think their championship window has completely closed. I don't think it's closing. I think it's closed.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I don't know exactly. I don't know how you can come back from this situation and just, you know, pretend to be a happy family after everything. I mean, money does cure all, winning does cure all. But it's going to be a tough one trying to get them back. I think at this point, best thing that they can do for him and for their own team would be to just let him go, you know. And I agree that I don't see this team being a legitimate title threat moving forward, you know, with what's going on in their locker room. I mean, they're in this division where, I mean, I could still see them winning the division, but I mean, I was pretty high on them to start the season. I'm not sure exactly if I'm feeling the same way that I was, you know, now. But, you know, it's definitely something that we're going to have to keep watching. One date to keep in mind, Week 11. Week 11 is when Le'Veon Bell would have to report to the Steelers in order for this to count as a league year. If he reports by Week 11, then he will become an unrestricted free agent this offseason. So definitely something to keep an eye out on, especially if you're holding them in fantasy football, which I am. Got to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I think that's really why I'm so low on Le'Veon right now. This is the first year I drafted him, and he's going to do this holdout thing.
Well, I've drafted him for years and years, and he always holds out, but he always plays. But this year, it's just something different, and it feels like he's dead serious about it. And it seems like, from what I heard, reports of him in Miami on jet skis, they're saying football seems to be the farthest thing from this guy's mind at the moment, which is, you know, it's a shame. It's really a shame. But I'd like to see him get it back. You know, I'd like to see him on a team where he can make a difference. But that remains to be seen with Le'Veon Bell. But, yeah, man, NFL season is underway, off to a crazy start. Any other stories for this week that you think that worth mentioning for you that you've seen? The Redskins look pretty darn good and against the Packers. They've been two different teams at points during the season, but they look pretty great, you know, yesterday, or Sunday, rather.
Yeah, Washington looks pretty good, man. I'm most impressed with the front seven. Allen and them boys, Matt Ioannidis, they all balled out. Adrian Peterson, man, I wrote about him on the website before the season started, questioning if he could be all day. And, I mean, he wasn't all day in that second game, but the two wins, he's been like AP of old, man.
Yeah, he's all day on certain days, it seems like. But on the days where he is, he looks good. He definitely looks good. I like what I'm seeing. And then, you know, I got to mention this, but, man, the Bills pretty much destroyed the Vikings, you know. Boy, Kirk Cousins out there. I'm not sure what's going on in there, if it was just a fluke game or what. But, I mean, a lot of people saw the Vikings as a Super Bowl contender. What do you think about that?
Every so often, Kirk Cousins will lay an egg. And I think the hope that Vikings fans had, and probably the hope that Kirk Cousins had when he went to Minnesota, was that the Vikings defense was so stout that they would just dominate everybody. But if you pay attention, I mean, if you watch the Eagles game in the playoffs last season when they beat the Vikings, Vikings defense lays eggs too. As good as they are, they come out and have some poor performances every so often. And Kirk Cousins, like I was saying earlier, is not the quarterback that's gonna win you the game. He's not going to guarantee you a W. Like the rest of your players are gonna have to step up and play well, and he won't make no mistakes. And he'll, you know what I mean? If everyone's playing well, he'll do what he needs to do. But you can't put the game on Kirk's shoulders. Like once they got down and they were trying to play catch up, that's not Kirk's game.
That's really a shame, man, because, when you pay a guy that kind of money, you kind of are hoping for him to kind of be that guy for you, be that savior. And, you would know better than most. He's been your quarterback for a couple seasons now. Safe to say you guys are not regretting the Kirk Cousins, feeling good about Alex Smith over there in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, I was feeling good the moment we traded for Alex Smith. I know a lot of Skins fans out there weren't feeling good, but if you guys are being honest with yourselves, you're feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Skins 2-1, they're looking pretty good.
I made a prediction at the beginning of the season that Alex Smith would have a better season than Kirk Cousins and Pat Mahomes. Clearly, I'm losing the Pat Mahomes one, but I think if you look at Smith and Cousins, I think Smith has a little bit of an edge on Cousins right now.
Yeah, I see them. I see them as a playoff team potentially this season. I had them predicted at a 10-6 record. That was before Darius Geis went down. I was a little concerned for running back with them, but Peterson looking really good. So I'd have to say, I still see them being a playoff team. And right now, 2-1, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles for the lead in the division. And the Philadelphia Eagles, they're starting to come into their own a little bit. They've got their fair share of injury problems. Carson Wentz finally back in the fold for the Eagles, which is a major relief for Eagles fans. And he looks pretty good in action. I had a close game with the Colts. He did pretty good. He's still doing what Carson does, which is, keeping plays alive, maneuvering out of the pocket, doing a little too much sometimes, but, always doing what he has to do. And they ended up pulling up the game in a close one. And they're very shorthanded. No Alshon Jeffrey. The offense seems like it's missing something, and I think Alshon is the missing piece of the offense, probably one of the most underrated players on that offense, but he should be back this week.
Ajayi was out last week too, wasn't he?
Yeah, Ajayi was out. Ajayi was out. Alshon's out. Mike Wallace was the starting receiver on the outside, done for the season. So, they ran a lot of 3 tight end packages to kind of compensate for their lack of wide receiver production. They brought in Jordan Matthews, which was a familiar face for Carson Wentz, but, solid player, but he wasn't really making a contribution. It seemed like they probably want to ease him into the playoffs, but no Ajayi, no Jeffrey, like you mentioned. Pretty good win in the first game for Carson Wentz back. It was a sloppy game out there with a lot of rain, but he did a pretty good job out there. And I like what I'm seeing there. They play the Titans next week, and then the week after that, we'll have a nice little showdown. Minnesota Vikings against the Eagles in a not a Super Bowl, but a NFC Championship rematch. We all know what happened the last time. Eagles put them to shame in the NFC Championship game last year. But Kirk Cousins, the quarterback, we'll see what happens now.
That Vikings defense better show up this time. I was picking Minnesota last year, man. They disappointed me.
Yeah, everyone had the Eagles lose in that game, and then they came in and they turned it on, and they really, they really lit a fire immediately that was not, they could not put that out. And, when you get a team that hot, the momentum, that's why as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you got to feel good because, the window for their Super Bowl opportunity was barely open, and they squeezed through it anyway. Without Carson Wentz, let's be honest, they weren't really supposed to win that Super Bowl. You know what I mean? They weren't.
Oh, I wrote you guys I wrote the Eagles off completely once Wentz went down. Once Wentz went down, I was completely off the Eagles.
Well, to be completely honest, man, and I can be honest with myself, when Carson Wentz went down, I'm looking around like, man, there goes our whole season. And I was hoping positive for Nick Foles, but I didn't expect the run. But once we started rolling, I was just hoping that we can, keep manufacturing these wins. And we did, man. The defense played extremely well. But now Carson's back, year 2, looking pretty good. I'm liking to see what we have this year. And, he's got to be hungry trying to get one this season. But it should be interesting, man. I see maybe, like I said, 2 teams out of this division potentially. So far, Cowboys aren't looking too good. Giants looking like they have some major holes as well. Both of them sitting at 1 and 2. So, the division will remain to unfold, and we'll kind of see how things go. But right now, Eagles and Redskins leading the way for the NFC East. But yeah, man, great stuff so far from the season. Any other last topics before we sign off, Jerome?
No, man, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, always a pleasure to have you on. As you know, Jerome is on our website, GoodAssSports.com. If you don't know, definitely check it out. Thanks for listening to us today, guys. Be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. That's Good Ass Sports Network. And then also follow us on the gram, IG, at Good Ass Sports. And be sure to stay tuned to our website. That's GoodAssSports.com. Dropping all the latest content. You make sure you check it out. We are Sports for the Culture. Signing off one more time. This is Scruff Lion. Jerome, thanks for joining me. Everybody, have a good week, and then we'll be touching base with y'all shortly.